Alrighty, how we doing, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Wolf, and welcome to my very first Wolcen video. This is going to be a build guide for you, and this is in early access. Now, Wolcen is an action RPG that's been out for, I think it's been, I want to say 4 years in early access, I'll be entirely honest. I have not kept tabs on it whatsoever, and I've only played the recent incarnation because I've read somewhere, and have been told, it's going to be fully releasing on February 13th. And when we were talking about it on stream, I got it gifted to me via one of the fellows in stream. Bunny is incredible for that. And as a result, I figured, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm going to play it and see how it goes. And I'm actually loving it. Now, the thing is of course we have full release, hopefully. It's been delayed multiple times, so who actually fucking knows at this point. On February 13th, they say. So that's supposed to add up to like level 90 and Act 2 and 3 and all this sort of stuff. So who knows. But this build is a powerful enough build that you can take the exact same concept and more than likely the exact same skill setup and just use it as you level, because I've essentially created the Blade Vortex. In this little build video, I'm going to show you my my skill tree, my attribute points, as well as some of my gear that I've got, and the sort of setup that I'm working with. So to showcase what the thing essentially does, is it has Blessed Hammers, more or less. Slash Blade Vortex if you're more PoE friendly. But if you've played Diablo beforehand, you've probably seen Blessed Hammer characters or Blessed Hammer Paladin or Crusader. That's essentially what we've created alongside a ton of mobility. So we are very, very good at speed clearing content. I'll just open a quick little map and adventure mode to show you, and we'll town portal back and call it good. I have just booted this game, so I apologize if it lags. It's not going to be anything like PoE's level of lag, but still. So, we're going to pop our flask, and as a result, we kind of just keep rolling on through. We do a significant amount of damage, as well as you can basically have infinite axes up at all times, with no real issue whatsoever. Packing a whole lot of movement in here as well, with a decent amount of CDR, allowing us to keep it up pretty much 24/7. It's very loud on my end, by the way. You might want to be very happy I have the in-game sound muted, because I have this game very loud for whatever reason. But I think you get the kind of gist of it. It's essentially Blade Vortex. You stop every few seconds to reapply your axes and whatnot, and continue on. Use my Rage Flask to put out more. I can use my Chain Hook as well to pull enemies into me if I so desire. Hop up here. Hop over here. Let's pull him in because he's a ranged mob. And it also has an augment on it to pull everything around me very slightly. Sadly, it does work a little awkwardly sometimes. Of course, there's going to be more skills and more skill gems added in due time. So you can mix and match with whatever you kind of want to. But I'm sure you can get the basic gist of it. So let me town portal out of here. You can't use a town portal here. Well, that's awkward. Alright, I should just show you right here then. So let's start off with my, I'm trying to remember where the button is, attribute points. So I am rocking 183 ferocity, 122 toughness, and 115 agility. These points are stat points, essentially. You can put them basically wherever you want. This is strength, this is, health, agility, wisdom. Pretty simple. You get 10 every time you level up, and the way I've been distributing mine is 5, 3, and then 2 here. So I'm going 5 into ferocity, 3 into agility, and 2 into toughness. I was originally doing this to try and score some extra attack speed and keep it as a secondary stat to make sure I got decent damage results. But because of my gear having more toughness on it, it ends up taking over as a secondary, and I'm actually losing damage because of that slight little miscalculation. So if we want to be as optimal as possible, this would be the primary stat, this would be the secondary stat, and this would be the tertiary stat. That actually has an impact because you gain more if you have a certain thing as secondary, right? So you see 81% from ferocity, because it's the primary one, 40% from toughness, even though toughness gives me no actual damage modifiers, which is why it's wasted. And then we have 28% from agility. So this should be swapped around so I can get 12% more damage out of agility. But because of gear, it's not that way, sadly. Well, yeah, 5, 3, and 2. Moving over into my skill tree. I'm still used to pressing like S from like my PoE keybinds and whatnot. So this is the skill tree for Wolcen. It has some quite nice depth, but at the same time, until we get the third ring of the skill tree, it's kind of fake depth in a way. Because what you can do, and what Wolcen is quite unique for, is you can rotate the passive skill tree, if you would like to. You can rotate any ring, the ring I'm on right now, the inner ring, if you'd like to, and, of course, the outer ring, which is where the extra level of depth is going to come from when we wind up getting the full game. It is quite a cool system, but it seems to be kind of fake depth in a way, because once you have certain connections set up, rotating the skill tree is kind of pointless. You can sort of rotate it to get basically whatever you want, if there's anything specific you want on the outside, but because it's sort of set up diagonally opposite, so you have like, say, warrior nodes here and warrior nodes here, then even if you rotate it this way, the warrior node you're going to want will be on the opposite corner, which kind of sucks, skill tree-wise. But I think the third ring will add a lot of depth to it. If you have played Wolcen before and are just looking for a snapshot of the skill tree, this is what I'm using currently. Essentially, there are small little nodes, as well as, you know, the keystones that Path of Exile has. Let's just call these notables, I suppose, eh? So to start off, I went for Backline Raider, which gives you 40% attack speed and 40% spell casting speed. This was because I was using a lot of like just basic two-handed greatswords with auto attacks for the most part, because I was able to kill pretty much everything. And 40% attack speed works fantastically if you have agility as a secondary stat, because it buffs your attack speed. So this allowed me to get quite a decent amount of attacks off. I don't know if that actually affects, you know, the summon chance or the summon timing of Bleeding Edge here. I'm not entirely sure, so that may be wasted in this build. So you could rotate the skill tree accordingly if you wanted to, by doing something like that, and then disregarding all of these points and going elsewhere. That's where you get the sort of depth in the skill tree. So I'll rotate that back, and I'll showcase a couple of the other ones. Then coming down here, we have Second Wind, which is when under 30% of max health, gain a burst of health regeneration. Something cool about this game, actually, is it has passive nodes, such as Second Wind, quite literally on gear. My helmet, for example, has when under 30% of max health, gain a burst of health regeneration. This is quite literally Second Wind on my helmet, which is pretty cool all in all. I don't know if they stack, so I don't know if I could, you know, get these 2 points back if I wanted to. I'm not really sure about that, but it's there nonetheless because it's been pretty useful. Bit of survivability, bit of tank ability. Then I end up with the Heat of Battle, which taking damage gives you 25 rage, which we're going to be in the thick of things. You're going to get hit every now and then by small mobs. There's a lot of small trash mobs, obviously. And just genning as much rage as possible is fantastic. We're going for a speed clear, speed optimization style character, and more rage to keep spamming out axes is fantastic for that. And then moving over to the opposite side here, we have where the fun starts. We have Feast for the Crows, which is 2% global life leech. This works with ranged attacks, spells, dots, anything. It's just global life leech. And I've gotten that to work with my Bleeding Edge, which essentially makes me near unkillable, provided I have an axe up and I don't get literally 100 to 0'd in 1 second. Otherwise, I can tank through it quite easily with no problems whatsoever. Then the top node is 2% life leech from attack damage, which of course Bleeding Edge is attack damage. It also has a bleed component to it. You know, the name is kind of there for you. And then we have Bestial Frenzy down here for 4% damage for each nearby enemy within 4 meters. And then we have the 2 little miners here, which is plus 2 meters of range for enemies to be nearby. Now this seems a little bit worded oddly, but essentially it just means that this range goes up to 6 meters instead, which is fantastic, because of course we're going to be jumping into the fray over and over, trying to be point blank, so bonus damage to nearby enemies is pretty good. And then we have the other one across the way, which is the more rage you have, the more damage you deal. 2% damage per 100 unspent rage. Now, more often than not, you're going to be wanting to dump your rage pretty much on command, right? But so this isn't really that great. But what is fantastic is the side node it has, which is 35 rage generation on kill. Considering a pack of trash that you can kill with the one spinning axe, it's roughly about 15 trash mobs. That's 15 times 35 rage. That's a lot of numbers, and I'm not very good with math. Well, I am, but I'm also not. So I'm not going to do that math for you right now, but that's a lot of fucking rage. And that's just in one pack that we can decimate in about 2 seconds, and then we're hopping to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. This allows you to keep your axes going pretty much forever. Yeah, all in all, pretty fantastic node. Then we get to the fun ones. We have God Amongst Men, which is 80% material damage, can only deal material damage. Now, what is material damage? It's physical damage, bleed damage, and poison damage. Anything else is considered elemental or like chaos or light damage. Material is just your basic sort of melee build equipment. So big physical two-handers will get an 80% damage bonus, but of course, we can only do material damage, which means you are slightly restricted in regards to gearing. So while you're leveling, while you're doing the campaign, I wouldn't take this node personally because it does restrict you in that sense. But once you reach endgame and can farm your specific gear, like I have for my current character, this gives you a massive damage bonuses. Combined with Blood Reaper, which gives you 30% physical damage converted into rend damage, which I'm not entirely sure how this works, if I'm wholly honest with you. But I believe rend damage is like physical, but has a chance to bleed, something along those lines. So I figured, let's just grab it. I'm sure it'll be fantastic because I am already doing bleed damage with Bleeding Edge. God, there's the amount of emo in the word Bleeding Edge is fucking hilarious to me still. And then, of course, the small nodes are useful for bleed chance on rend damage and life leech on a bleeding target. And then we get conversion here for fire, frost, and lightning converted into physical, and then aether, shadow, and sacred converted into physical as well. That's the light and dark I was telling you about. So they are still of use to you if you get them on items and you're kind of stuck with it. They're not throwaways, but they're not fantastic. So that's when it leads us off to gear, which I have a physical plus rend two-handed weapon that does some very fantastic damage with an attack speed gem in there as well. This is pretty much what you're going to be wanting to look for at endgame. You can use a battle axe, you can use a greatsword, you can use a maul. Considering we're going off of a skill, it doesn't really matter what the main weapon is. All that matters is the damage on it, right? If we're talking auto attacks and whatnot, I actually prefer greatsword personally, but of course we're using Bleeding Edge all the time, so it doesn't really make a difference. In regards to the rest of my gear, I have a mix of all resistance gear, which is basically armor in this game. A mix of that and a lot of life gear as well, or gear that just has life on it. My rings have plus maximum health. I have plus 118 max health there, plus 100 max health there. I have health and resistance there. I have resistance here. I have a lot of all resist here. I need to put defensive gems in there. I have more all resist there, 70 max HP. A little bit of force shield here because it's just rolled well. I don't really need to keep that, but it's legendary, so I figured why not. We have all resistance here with some extra toughness, and then all resistance here. Basically a bunch of armor gear. I'm not too sure what the values are, like if armor gear is better than life gear, but from my experience, it's been working out pretty okay. I haven't had many issues. I do still sometimes just get one tapped, but it's day, I want to say 2 or 3 of me playing Wolcen so far. So I'm not entirely sure what that is due to exactly. I'm not sure if I'm missing resistance or some shit like that. Who knows? But if we go into details here, you can see that my physical resistance is at 42%. So, you know, the damage I'm taking is reduced by 42%. Same thing with toxic and rend. And then my fire, frost, and lightning is at 49. And my aether, sacred, and shadow is reduced even more. So all resist gear is actually pretty good, all in all, for being tanky. And I am only level 20 as well, and I'm packing almost 2k health, which, as a PoE player, is kind of whack to me. But, yeah. And that will pretty much round out my set of gear. I shall show you my skills, and I believe we can call it a video, I suppose. If I press S here, you can see the skills I am using. I have every single skill in the early access so far. I'm going to be making a mage build later on today when I start streaming in probably a few hours from now. I'm going to be trying to do a mage build that reminds me of what I tried to play in Grim Dawn, and will be playing in Grim Dawn when I play it again, which is a like ice comet type build. Should be fun, so keep an eye out for that coming up if you're interested in that sort of thing. Yeah. Onwards to the skills. We cannot change our default attack to my knowledge, so that's just kind of there. Then we're using Tracker's Reach, which is the chain that I was telling you about. This costs 0 rage and is usable basically on cooldown if you want to. Allows you to optimize your packs quite a bit. As someone who's used a lot of Ancient Spear with Rage Flip in Diablo 3, it's felt pretty at home to me. You can switch out whatever sort of augment you want. Sadly, Unrelenting Hunt, the one that I've been messing around with, isn't really all that great. I thought it was going to throw chains out in all directions at maximum range, but instead you get this sort of little pansy thing that doesn't really make much of a difference, because that's the size of the axe, right? So if they're in that radius, they're probably dead already. Doesn't really make a big impact, so I can take that one off and switch it to just about whatever I want. Probably rend damage there, it's not entirely bad. I also have reduced cooldown, gain rage for each enemy hit, and increased range. Stunning enemies who are hit by it is also not that bad. You can use basically any combination, but rage, range, and reduced cooldown is quite nice as well. I was also using, in this slot, where is it? I'm trying to find it. There's like a chain strike thing. This one. I'll just show you what it does. Pop this. It does a sort of Kratos style of combo, and it was working quite well as a sort of like fast clear type of thing, but it's a little bit awkward because the way it registers damage is extremely weird. So if you were to do an attack with this, normally, you know, when you swing all the way sideways, you think it has an active hitbox, right? So say you've got an enemy in the center, when you swing your chains, it'll collide with them, deal damage, and then keep going, right? You'd think. But the way they've coded it, it seems, makes it feel slightly awkward. Because either my 12 MS is lying to me, or they've coded it so that when you swing, it goes the whole way, and then goes, okay, there's one enemy in the area, he takes damage now, after you've reached the end of the swing. Which just feels really awkward, because it feels like damage is slightly delayed, or the hitbox is off, or something like that, and the skill itself just feels kind of whack, in my opinion. All in all, though, it is a cool, like, skill and a cool concept and whatnot to, you know, have the Kratos chains and all that sort of stuff. It's pretty cool, but it's really not that great. So I've been rolling with a rigged up Tracker's Reach in there instead. Bleeding Edge, we're looking at AoE, and then Unstoppable Momentum, which is half of the build, essentially. I do have this at level 20, because this allows me to keep the axe spinning for a short duration after being thrown at an increased cost and reduced damage. And then we have Astral Orbit, the other 8-pointer, which the axe now follows you as you move, allowing us to create Blessed Hammer / Blade Vortex / pure hilarity at its finest, combined with the AoE, and obviously the axe keeping spinning. It gets pretty good, as I'm sure you saw. That's how you create the build, is this combination of runes. You can play a different version of this if you want. Feel free. Yeah, all in all, it's pretty good. And maybe switch out area for Taste of Blood if you feel you have like life regen problems or life leech problems. But since I have global leech, still lets me leech. So then on my war cry, I have rage per enemy hit and improved rage gen for the duration of the skill. Increases likelihood of health globes spawning while this is active. Of course, we're running through everything, so passive health globes is fantastic for survival. Then I have increased duration of the buffs granted by this skill, which is attack speed and cast speed and rage gen now. As well as increases the effectiveness of all buffs granted by this skill and other skills. Obviously, I talked about that before. And all res per enemy hit. So you want to use this to either generate rage, if need be, or in the fray, if possible, because we have a bunch of buffs, right? We got the rage gen, attack speed, health globe stuff. And it's just an extra rage generator in there with the tracker's reach. You don't ever really need to stop to auto attack. I'd love to switch this to move only because it's kind of awkward not having it on move only, as a lot of, after playing a lot of PoE, it's definitely a bit weird, but such is life. And then back in here, we have a Warpath, which is the movement skill you saw me using. This has increased damage, stuns at the end of the charge, creates a damaging shockwave, and leaves a damaging area on the ground for a few seconds. That is this ability, which can clear stuff pretty much on its own if you want to. Now, it does have a 4-second cooldown, but because I have a bunch of CDR, I think it's actually like a 6 or 8 second cooldown, I'll be honest. But I have a decent amount of CDR, and as a result, its cooldown gets knocked down quite a bit, and I can use that in tandem with my Heroic Leap to cover even more ground. This is a very fantastic skill that just actually clears packs on its own. So we have a lot of AoE damage, we have a lot of movement, a lot of speed, just in general. All in all, pretty fantastic. And I showed you the rune setup, so let's move on to our last skill, which is Wings of Ishmir, or just Heroic Leap, let's be honest here. And we are rolling with greater rage generation, because it's one of the main things we're using. We're using rage gen, rage gen, rage gen. And then the potion. I have a large rage potion, which is on-demand damage for boss fights, pretty much. And then we have creates a damaging shockwave, which makes this do fantastic AoE damage, and with the right weapon, 1,000 damage, clears packs basically on its own. Then we have Relentless Pursuit, which is not actually required. You can play with just this setup if you want to, because it takes away your dodge roll, because it no longer has a cooldown, but it does cost a stamina point to use. Now, the thing you can do in Wolcen is have a dodge roll. This has a slight bit of invulnerability on it, to my knowledge, and all in all, it's pretty okay. So you can use that, or you can consume these stamina points down here for Wings of Ishmir with this rune. So you can either have, dodge roll into this, into that to cover that much ground. That's the normal combo if you're not playing with this setup, and it covers a decent amount of ground. Or, you can just hop, and we're at full rage. This is where it kind of gets insane, because I have greater rage generation on it, so when you slam 4 or 5 back-to-back, you're capped on rage, right? And, yeah, extra bit of rage gen. You don't really run out of rage at all, to my knowledge, with the way this is currently rigged up. And of course, with another 70 levels-ish on the horizon, I believe it can only get better. If you enjoy this sort of build or sort of style, you can quite easily take this template and run with it for pretty much the rest of the game if you want to. And if you do, let me know how it goes when the game does fully launch. But that's going to be all for me, and as always, take care, gentlemen. Let me know if you enjoyed this build and me branching out a little bit in the comments down below. Take care.